Got a very exciting session today on AI search, which I think a lot of people are trying to figure out. And it always kind of continues to be this black box. And SEO specifically, lives as this black box. And today we're going to learn how to solve it. There's a few things and a few steps that we'll go through. But it's really not as scary as it might sound. Showing up on AI search is so important as this shift is happening. And so we'll talk about, how we can learn about this and how we can make some adjustments in Claude Code. We'll actually be diving in and building in Claude Code today, and show you guys how to build some workflows. We've got Austin here tuning in. What's up, Austin?
How's it going, man?
Good. Austin is our head of AEO here at Catalyst, and has built some really awesome workflows and processes around how to actually get your company and get your clients essentially across the board of different categories to actually show up in AI search and rank. So, Austin, I'll let you give a little intro.
Yeah, so nice to meet everyone here or have you here. I've been doing SEO for 12 years now. The last 3 has essentially gone full AEO. A lot of AEO still is good SEO, but there are some nuances and things that you really do have to pay attention to. So me and Will have been doing some awesome things with, some workflows, a lot of cool tools testing, and just really figuring out, how to create a repeatable formula for success. We've been able to do that, and so hopefully I can share some of those tactical things with you guys.
Yeah. Austin, while we have you, do you want to maybe tell us a little bit about kind of what the difference is between and how people should be thinking about SEO versus AEO?
Yep, absolutely. So I like to begin with kind of like a metaphor and like a real world scenario where everything about LLMs now, well, AI, SEO, AEO, is all about authority. So you can't really, just like in real life, you can't really cheat authority to a certain point. So I always give the example, let's say that someone asks me about Will, and they say, I'll pay you $100 to say something nice about Will, right? So I say it, but then someone finds out that I was paid to say something that doesn't really have the same effect. Or I'm a Fortune 500 CEO and I say something nice about Will, that has a lot. I just transferred a lot of authority directly to Will. I could say the exact same thing. If I'm an intern, I have now transferred no authority to Will. This is kind of what is happening with LLMs. Some of you might be aware of domain authority. This is a little bit different. Domain authority is a game all about backlinks, which is, links from one site to another. That is, let's say, important, but not nearly as important as it used to be. It's all about a game of authority, and it's about a game of revenue, not just clicks. So you can't, focus on top of funnel. You can't just be educational. What used to work back in the day, let's even say 4 or 5 years ago, was you would just try to find the most popular topic, the most trending topic, and you would do what's called like an ultimate guide. And essentially it was just stuffing words. Let's say, like, let's make a guide 10,000 words long. No one's going to read it, but engines would just eat it up. That doesn't work anymore because everyone here is familiar with LLMs now. You'll notice that if you search anything too generic, it's just going to give you the answer, but it's not going to cite anybody. So let's say if we were to say something about that would be relevant to Catalyst, if I were to just search what is AEO, it's not going to say AEO is blah, 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 and then cite Catalyst. It's not going to cite anybody. It's just going to give the answer. So this is something me and Will have been seeing a lot of, is that a lot of big teams, even teams that have a lot of revenue, are still focusing in the wrong areas for multiple things.
Yeah, no one's really made these playbooks yet. I think we're all kind of building them as we go. But I think that's an important distinction that you call out there of the way that you would rank previously is not the same. And I think a lot of people just dove into the volume trap, which we'll
Yep.
talk about a little bit as well.
Yep.
But volume does not actually mean, and I think that's another point you made there, which I think is super important to focus on, is like AI isn't citing everything because it has a layer of knowledge where
Yep.
Google did cite every answer. And
Exactly.
so we actually need to be going a layer deeper and have a little bit more perspective and depth that
100%.
that Google just didn't offer.
And one more thing I want to add to that is,
Yeah.
especially B2B companies should really get this, in terms of KPIs, they should not care so much about overall clicks. And especially if you're in a service, you really don't want to look at that. I mean, it's important, it's a good metric to watch, but it shouldn't be the end all be all, because I can give a real world example. I know a guy that's in B2B services, he does lead gen. He got maybe 150 total clicks from LLMs from the beginning of the year. So, from January to now is what, maybe he was getting 30 clicks a month. He closed 7 deals, 7 clients. I
Hmm.
mean, everyone here can do the math, how phenomenal it is to go from 150 clicks, not to meetings, to closed booked deals. So he couldn't honestly care less about his traffic if he's closing 7 for every 150. So that's one thing I try to tell people is don't care so much about the overall traffic numbers.
Yeah. Traffic is kind of a false positive here.
Yep.
Um, so awesome. So today we're going to be doing a live demo, and we're going to be actually going through the steps together. And if we have any brave volunteers, if you work at a company or have a company, drop your URL below, and we'll actually build this session
Nice.
specifically for you. But the idea is, and I can pull up some slides here to just kind of walk us through this narrative. But the whole thing with AEO is if we don't know what to optimize, we don't really know where to start. And so today we're going to go through how a SaaS company, B2B SaaS, this works for other, the same principles apply across the board, but actually showing you how you can use Claude Cowork to build a system to help you do this more efficiently. Um, and so the way I always kind of walk our clients through this or ask people is go over actually to ChatGPT or your LLM of choice and put yourself in the seat of what your potential buyer is doing. Um, but essentially, what a buyer would do is, let's say you're looking for a CRM, um, and if you are a go-to-market leader or head of revenue, and you need to research and find a new CRM, you might come into ChatGPT and go, what's the best CRM to use in 2026 for a B2B SaaS company? And this is exactly what a buyer will be doing.
Yep.
They'll come in here, and you can see that AI is compiling this list from a bunch of different sources, and it does cite its sources here. But you can see it kind of consolidates this list and this ranking. And so this best of query, the best X query, is what your buyers are defaulting to. We know that's the
Yep.
primary search term. Oh,
That's actually been proven, Will, by
yeah.
multiple new AEO reports by Ahrefs, SCMrush. The best is still the highest converting.
Yeah, that's incredible. So this is just like the mindset to think about how your buyer is researching. And so if we don't know, this is just one specific search that we're doing, but if we don't know what to optimize, we don't really have anywhere to start, right? How do we start to influence what is being suggested here on these lists? And so we need a baseline, we need an audit. Um, but the a lot of people are approaching this, and this is kind of what we were talking at the beginning, is like they're approaching it the same way that they would approach SEO. And so we need to understand how people are searching on LLMs to be able to make actually improving these things. And as Austin was talking about before, you need to optimize for different things. The SEO game was all about backlinks, um, owned pages, so actually having your pages rank,
Yep.
and then domain authority and backlinks. And now we're actually seeing, you know, instead of a list of 10, on the Google homepage, you're getting one recommendation. Or, in that example, you were getting, a ranked list of 5, but it's actually more about the other companies that are citing you. You can see that the example, none of them were actually from that CRM's website specifically. And so it's more important to get, credible citations from other websites. And so it now builds this like all-encompassing entity authority that becomes ever more important. And Austin, from your experience, what are some things that make up entity authority? I know a lot of people talk about like Reddit, and YouTube and LinkedIn have kind of entered the conversation. Like, what are you seeing there?
Yeah, so even before I give a specific, let's say, name of a platform, the most important thing with entity authority is relevance.
Mm,
So another thing going back to this pre-AI and what a lot of people are still doing wrong is when they decide who they want to work with an external publication. What they're doing is they are looking at traffic. So if a website gets 1 million, they automatically think that's better than a website that gets 100,000 a month. If the domain authority is high, they automatically consider that much better than a slightly lower domain authority. That used to essentially be correct with SEO. That is no longer correct with AI. AI cares all about relevance. So if I go back to that example I was giving earlier where I'm giving a recommendation to somebody, let's say that I am in your industry. So we're talking CRMs. Let's say that I've been a head of growth, I've been a CEO, I've been in the industry for many years. I am the website. I'll make it more tactical for you guys. Sorry. So let's say that my website is all about HR, is all about operations, things like that. That's directly relevant to this industry. So if you get a post from my website that's talking positively about you, that's directly relevant. We could have that same post, but if you put it on an e-commerce website, that e-commerce website might have 10 times the volume. That e-commerce website might have 5 times the domain authority, but none of that matters. AI essentially completely disregards it as if it never existed because AI is saying that's not relevant. That post should not be taken into our citations because it's not relevant at all. Then once you go after relevance, then that's marked off. Then you could kind of look at traffic, but even then, traffic is actually the last. You want to go relevance, then you want to look at domain authority, then you want to look at traffic last.
interesting. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's interesting how those kind of rank and show up. But
And sorry, those platforms you're talking about, Will, this is a little secret here just for everyone, but I'm sure everyone has just been blasted with Reddit. Reddit's the way to go. Reddit, 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 Reddit. It's really not as important as everyone makes it out to be. And Reddit is not stupid. They've gotten smart. They know what's going on. Just even the last couple months, you had all these agencies pop up that would essentially make all these fake accounts. They would make posts for you. They'd make comments for you and say, Catalyst is the best. Pipedrive is the best, blah, blah, blah. If you go back to those are essentially all deleted now. So anything that you were getting is now gone. It's been eliminated from LLM's database. That is gone. What is actually more important, something external from your website, would be something like YouTube, surprisingly. So YouTube has a lot of trust, and it's the YouTube long form. So that's where I would tell people, Will, to focus more of their time.
yeah, interesting. But it's what I think the biggest learning is it's like how you're showing up across um, all of the industries or all of these platforms versus just your own
Yep,
platform
exactly.
and
Yep,
your own channel.
exactly.
And so how do we know how we're doing, right? Like, how do we actually understand what is our entity authority? Is our content correct? How are we showing up on other websites? Um, and so we want to figure out how we can understand this. But the first thing we need to do is actually understand like how we're ranking and how we're showing up. There's a whole bunch of audit tools out there. We have our own on catalyst.com/AEO audit. But what we want to do is we want to actually see which engines are citing the company, what pillars are being scored. So entity, content, distribution, and crawlability. What's working, what's not. Usually entity authority is the thing that we see kind
Yep.
of trailing behind. What those exact sources are, the voice share, and then what we can do is we can take all of this information and actually put it into Claude Code to understand how we can then make some changes. So I'm going to actually run us through with our brave
Let's see it.
volunteer bow merge. So I went ahead and just put in, I'm going to put in some placeholders, obviously making some assumptions here, but putting in your website. And what this is going to do is it's actually going to build first synthetic profiles. So like, who is the buyer that's actually buying this product? Building like personalities or personas from them, and then understanding what their search queries might be. It's then going to run those searches through. You can see it just went from ChatGPT to Claude to Gemini, Google AI Overview, and it's actually running these search queries to see what is showing up when you ask these search terms, like we did initially. And this is doing it 200 times. So you get a really unbiased
Nice.
result. It's also doing things like going to your website, looking for technical statistics and technical data. And you can see we have this awesome little email gate, but no worries. If you just put in your email, got Catalyst, you'd think I'd be able to spell that by now. Then you can unlock it and you can start to see. So this is real data from BowMerge, and you can see, what's working and what's not. The machine makes a little bit of a estimate based off of average contract value. That's probably the one that I just say, like, put a little asterisk next to it. It's estimating as best as possible. But you can see we get this score breakdown of how much are you being recommended. So this is how often AI names you when buyers ask. How credible are you? So how many third-party sites are actually showing and giving you authority signals saying that you're a valuable resource to look at? How readable you are. So this is how crawlers can reach you and read you. So this is a little bit of technical plus your content. And then substantive. So are the things that you're putting out there original? Is it just a regurgitation of other information? Is it AI generated? Those types of things. And it gives you this kind of AEO score. Again, you can see coverage by engine, how much. So again, when it ran all through those searches, how much ChatGPT referenced you, how many times Claude did, Gemini, Perplexity, and Google AIO, because each one kind of ranks things differently. And so it gives you a good understanding of where to go from there. We also go into who is winning. Are these competitors that you're aware of? Because this is who's showing up when some of these search queries like best synergy tracking software for PE portfolio companies, and you can go into each query and see the responses. We have you were showing up. Awesome. I'm glad to hear that these are people you've heard of. So in Gemini, you actually showed up for best alternatives to mergeware. And so what's cool is you start to get this really understanding of like, what keywords are we ranking for? if you're ranking on one or two of the search engines, it actually doesn't take that much work to start showing up on the other ones. So you can kind of start to understand where you want to focus in. You can then see how your competitors are ranking and showing up on those same queries, query demand versus your coverage. So how much volume is showing up here? And then we give you some ideas of why you're losing, or why you're not ranking. Maybe we can change that language, but why you're not ranking the way that you want to. So kind of the key metrics, 94% of buyer queries are answered without you. Anyway, there's a whole lot of data here. And I'm going to rush through this because, oh, look, it even found you. Because
There
it
we
does
go.
know for your entity, right? Are you credible? Are you doing the things that you say you're doing for the company? So all of that, the now what is the coolest part. We have some case studies in here, but we actually have this button where you can download all of this learnings and data into a markdown memory pack that you can load directly into Claude. And so if you download this, you can also load it directly into your AI of choice. But what is really cool is you can then come in and start building something live in your own Claude Code setup. So now in Claude Code, you can actually come in and bring in that memory pack and start working in a project file, plus the resources that we'll give you guys today of like our AEO best practices. But we want to start running through some ways to solve this. And so I'm going to put in a prompt here that honestly is just going to give us kind of an overview. That's going to take that memory pack and start building out an action plan. Now, the things that we want to do is see what we're ranking for, and then start producing content on those topics that we can publish, to create content to start ranking for some of those terms or some of those queries. And what's so cool about AEO versus SEO is that feedback loop is significantly faster.
Yep.
Before, and Austin, you can probably speak to this better, but before, when you would publish something on SEO, it would take months or even more, 3 to 5 months to actually start seeing the results of that. And so you weren't able to iterate as quickly as we've gotten used to with other platforms.
And it was a lot of pay to play. So what I really like about AEO is that it's essentially become a skill game. Uh, Part of it, you can do some things by increasing budgets, but the skill has it's really been democratized, which I'm a fan of. But when it comes to what you just mentioned of it taking time, yeah, LLMs can essentially have something cited in 24 hours. Really, really interesting test about last year. Doesn't work the same now, but just reference for everyone. When AEO was real fresh, you could buy a press release, and it was meant to test speed. So you could buy a press release this morning, and it would actually be cited by LLMs that night.
Wow.
Yeah, it was
I mean,
like a 2 month cheat code.
yeah, that's insane. Um, this is so yeah, so what we're doing here now, and a lot of you might already have this if you're working out of Claude Code, but just because we're using, this is my first time interacting with this website, we're actually going to create like a single file of truth. And so extracting all the information from the audit and their website to create like a single source of truth. So everything we produce on top of this, follows that, and it's not having to go out and do research every time. This is super important, especially when we get into the content production side of things.
Yeah.
So it's not hallucinating information.
Yeah, that's. I'm glad you touched on that, Will. maybe me and you could go deeper on this for a minute. The importance of the file of truth.
Yeah.
Um, I guess I could start, but for everyone listening, I kind of called it the file of truth because it's sounds kind of dramatic, right? But it's so important because for early AEO clients we were working with, they would have us look at their website. Of course, we can scrape everything, we take everything that we could possibly get, but as you guys probably know, a lot of websites are not up to date. So what would happen would we would post something and they would say that we actually don't even have that product anymore, and so,
Hmm.
or this number is wrong, or we're at 1.5 billion, not 1 billion. And so this file of truth is just very good hygiene for any company to do, even if they're not doing AEO. Wouldn't you agree, Will?
Yeah. I mean, I have this for everything we do, especially like, what our services are, the workshops I've done before, just having record of all that in one
Yeah,
place. Especially when it comes to like case studies.
absolutely.
Yeah, they're all published on our website, but I just have a case study markdown file associated with each um, each offering that we have. So for our AEO clients, we have all our case studies, everything about Catalyst. And so you can see how it shows up. So here we have this source of truth. We did ask it to be a little bit more AEO specific. That was one of the things that Claude asked us to confirm. But it then goes in and finds, entity information. It found, because of that audit, it found a lot of those things like your LinkedIn and things like that. The product, what it does. And so now whenever we create all this new information, we have all of this, as well as these AAO best baseline metrics. So we know, are we improving? Are we getting better? And so we have this, single source of truth now. And the next thing we want to do is start mapping out, where are our opportunity areas of blogs that we need to be publishing on our own website. And so I'm actually going to go in here and just create a prompt and say, looking at the audit we ran, what are the areas of opportunity for blogs or articles we should be. And now, um, what it's doing is it's not just inventing information or data to work off of. It is using that audit that we just ran it through to actually come up with these topics. And so you're not shooting blind of like, what blogs should I be posting?
Yep.
We actually know what needs to be created from the audit. I don't know if you have anything to add there, Austin.
Yeah, I mean, this is the best way to start. You essentially you have to look at it. Another metaphor for you guys, but it's like cooking, right? You have to have the ingredients correct first before you can make the correct dish,
Mm.
right? And it might sound insane, but it's like if you buy a bunch of vegetables and you're like, okay, well, I want a cake. You're like, well, it's not going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
This essentially is making sure that everything is correct before you even start the process. So this is a perfect workflow here.
Yeah. You can see it's actually trying to go and scrape the web, which I might just need to nudge it to look at that data. You can see everything is kind of getting added to our working folders and our working files here.
One thing
Um,
I will say, Will, is
yeah.
just for them to have a little bit more context is even when it gives them their content plan here, they still want a pair of human eyes. You still want an expert to look at this because it's probably still going to give a lot of top of funnel ideas.
Mm.
Um, and as we mentioned, you want it to be more middle of funnel, bottom of funnel.
Yeah.
And if they don't have someone on their team that has the experience to kind of just have those pair of eyes and say, hey, we know that this probably is not going to rank for about 6 months, but this topic here, we've been doing well before. Maybe we should go harder here. You always want to have that human in the loop.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think it goes without saying for any AI workflow, especially in these days, is you need to have, human oversight, an expert, in the industry to know
Yep.
what's working and what's not. Um, so we'll let this run through, and it's saying, okay, so like best synergy tracking software for PE portfolio companies, listicle, best mergeware alternatives. And so now we have these, let's call it the first six blogs that we now want to be creating. And so what we'll do is we'll use a writing skill, which I will include in the resource pack. But you can see we just created this for Bowmerge, and it
Nice.
gives a comprehensive overview of how we want to actually create this article. And so we can come in here and say, great, let's write the first one using the article writer skill.
The top two on its recommendations are both best.
Yeah. No, it really is the number one thing being recommended.
That's what people search.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, it's so funny how everything content related, any marketing related is like you're going to be so much more accurate if you can just put yourself in the head of your buyer.
Yep.
It's something so simple that most people
It
overlook.
really is, right? Just that perspective. You got to think of, even if you're searching for, let's say, shoes, are you going to go to Google, even in the past, right, before
Mm-hmm.
AEO, and say, which shoes are right for me? No, you're going to say best running shoes.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, it makes it easier for everybody.
Everyone thinks that their position is unique or different
Yep.
because we're all special snowflakes. But um, even if you get hyper specific in your query of like, what's the best CRM for, Series A founders living
Yep.
in New York, like
Yep.
no matter how specific you get, it's still the best for.
Exactly.
Um, So what's cool is, because part of the skill is to go and do some research and searching the web, we actually are going through this process. You can see it's looking up, different sources, seeing what's being posted out there currently. What I love about Claude Cowork is it has this progress tracker, and it actually tells you what its plan is going to be before it starts to build. And so this is just the creation of one article, and this audit gave us like the first highest leverage 6 articles to produce. But what's really cool is when you start doing this on a cadence, you can create this feedback loop. Back to what we were saying about like the time compression is so much shorter now, where we can get this feedback loop of, okay, we created this article, check it in 3 weeks, maybe 2 months, at different touch points to see how it's performing, how it's ranking, and then what modifications, what do we need to update or refresh. And this is where we get this kind of self-improving, agentic style AEO tool where it's able to understand what needs to be improved upon, actually goes in and writes it. We always recommend and always include, that human touch point, that human element. So we're not just regurgitating, content 100%. I have a lot of other videos and discussions talking about, what happens when you have a model that trains off of other AI models. But essentially, you get net zero. Think about it as like ice cream cones. If you ask, what are the best ice cream flavors, you might get a list of like 10. But by the time you ask that 50, 100, 200 times, it's going to start averaging out. And so at the end of that, if you're just training off and asking off the same data, you eventually just get one answer, one unified answer. And the same thing happens with, producing content. And so, all of that being said, AI favors and prefers new material, new source information,
Yep.
research, new perspective, because it's not just adding to that, recursive loop that, all the models are training off of each other now.
Yeah, and I could throw in something there that might be interesting for everyone. New data just came out. I believe it was also SCM Rush, but in incredible numbers saying 76% of all citations are 2 pages or blog posts, let's say blog post articles that have been published or refreshed in the last 30 days.
Wow.
76%. So essentially, if you're not refreshing content, let's say this article here, Will, they just wrote and published. If they don't touch this for 2, 3 months, it's actively dropping in LLMs.
Yeah. So the takeaway there is that we need to be constantly refreshing this.
Yeah, so you want to get into a system of constantly publishing new content and constantly refreshing old content. And
Yeah.
it really is funny because refreshing old content, it's only 30 days old, but it is old now, let's say. It's actually very high leverage, great play because it's much quicker and easier to update an old post than it is to make a new post. And it's already been ranking, so it's going to stay in its position. So
Mm.
essentially, you're just stopping it from falling. And you can think if your competitors aren't smart enough to refresh, you're essentially staying ahead of them every month that they don't refresh.
How do you think about that on a operations level, right? How are
Tactical,
you how are you balancing net new creation versus refresh?
great question. So let's say that a company was pretty aggressive and they were doing one new blog article per day. We're not going to touch on the external posts. We're not going to touch on anything else. We're just going to touch on blog posts for now. Something they can control. They're publishing 5 a week, once per work day. It gets to month 2. We're at day 31. What I do is we want to have a new article being published and an old article being refreshed on the same day.
Hmm.
Yeah, so then we're going to 10 articles, let's say, a day. That, and again, it's not like now you're working, a lot of this is human in the loop, but still things are much faster. Let's say we get to month 3. Now we're refreshing the stuff from month 2, month 3. It's this compounding effect though. So you don't, it's almost like you don't want people to be scared of, oh man, in month 10 I got to do 10 articles a day, right?
Yeah.
But think about it, if you can have 10 articles about a similar topic written from a different point of view, and you're essentially the freshest for all 10, and your competitor hasn't refreshed that in 10 months, you have such a disproportionate advantage that it's something that essentially needs to be done.
Yeah. This is something that I've been talking about and actually doing a session on this evening at a panel about the modern content strategy, how everything needs to be um, that loop, that feedback loop needs to be tighter on
Yep.
both refreshing and producing net new material.
Yes.
But the way that we are used to doing it is not sufficient anymore.
Yes.
Because we used to sit down, plan for a quarter of like a
Yep.
calendar. But we need to be looking at following what's actually being searched. What are the trends there?
Yes.
And actually being, refreshing is becoming so much more important. Where before you could refresh like once a year, once every six
Exactly.
months,
Yep.
and that actually needs to be a key component of the strategy now. I love that 70% statistic.
Yep.
Um, I'm a workflows guy now, and so what are our inputs and what are our outputs, and how can we build a steady stream of net new information, material, perspective, data as our input field, and then figure out where that needs to be distributed to. Do we have an article on that already and it just needs to be updated? Does that need to be something net new? Should
Yep.
this be a content post? Should it be a video that then gets cited into an article? So building this kind of like signal strategy layer
100%.
that is feeding in data, as well as we'll have brand objectives and narratives we want to reach towards, but it really should be just self-learning and self-improving over time.
100%. And the cool thing about that is, think of, it might sound difficult. Let's say someone's listening and think, well, like refreshing, like what does that mean? Do I change a comma to a period? Do I add one
Yeah.
sentence? What does that mean? And to your point, it's keeping the new fresh data. So if I were to give a real world example, let's say for us at Catalyst, Will, what do we have to use for this article we want to refresh? So we can look at new news. If a new report came out, now we can use a statistic from that report. Now we're replacing an old statistic with a new statistic. If we have a new case study, now we have the new case study mentioned along with the other case study we mentioned. If we have, let's say a B2B company that looks at like value locked or, total funding, instead of, like I mentioned, the old article had the old number at 1 billion, now it's 1.5. We update that. It's little things, but all of that, especially metrics, matter so much. Actionable
Yeah.
statements and metrics are so important.
Yeah. Well, I know we're wrapping up in time here, but I just hope this gives you guys an understanding of like how to use an audit tool. You can obviously use ours, but there are so many out there right now. They all give similar information. Um, what we have that I don't think other people do is just like being able to use it and pulling it into your Claude skills. And so being able to use that as a starting point. Now, content production, as we were talking about, is just one piece of the puzzle.
Yep.
You need the feedback loop, and you need the ability to learn and kind of continue to improve over time. But but the it's a place to start. And then external citations is the next key component of this. Are there any impacts to AEO results if the blog or content is 100% AI generated?
That's a great question because that's actually something that a lot of people have been asking. So if everything from outline to writing to publishing is AI, you're not actually going to get punished. Google actually came out with a another update, an announcement the other day that you're not going to get punished. It doesn't matter on volume as long as you're not doing 500 posts a day and the content is good. Here is where you will get punished if it's purely AI content. If you're not including things that make your content unique. And what I mean by that is not tone of voice. What I mean by that is tactical things where you don't have internal links, you don't have external links, you're not using company knowledge as Will mentioned, where you're using the sitemap and your skill, your source of truth. You know, every article follows the exact same outline. So let's say we have an intro, we have a key takeaways, 3 sections, a conclusion, FAQ. If every single article follows that exact, you're probably going to get punished. The reason why AI generated, but with human in the loop, does not get penalized is because let's say that we're writing for a client and one of the posts is a report. That's going to be 7, 8K words. It's going to be very data heavy. It's going to have a lot of statistics, going to have all these external links. But then the next post is one of these best listicles. It's much shorter. It's a completely different outline, completely different tone of voice. LLMs, Google is not stupid. They say, okay, this is a real content strategy. But if Catalyst has posted the exact same outline, the exact same thing every single day, they're not stupid. You're going to get punished.
I think defining what we mean when we say like AI generated, because there's different versions of it. There are some people that go into ChatGPT and just say like, write me an article
Yeah.
on best CRMs.
Yep.
There's no research. There's no original input source. There's no data. Like, right? It's just going to pull generic content.
Exactly.
And now that everyone can do that, that's the baseline. That's kind of back to what Austin was saying at the beginning, is like that answer probably won't even cite a specific resource because it's what AI knows already. Where you actually start to show up and start to rank is when you're providing a perspective or an opinion that isn't, AI doesn't have an opinion. And so, it depends on how you're building it. Now, even if you have, interviews and quotes and data and all this original proprietary information, can you run that through and just say, using all of that material, create an article? Yes, you can, and that will rank better than option A,
Yep.
but it still won't rank better than option C, who is using all of that input source already and still putting that human touch on it. And so it's not a black or white. It's just how you actually get cited.
Yep.
We saw, a couple years ago when ChatGPT first came out, people get a little too excited about the ability to just mass produce content.
Yep.
And for a while, their SEO rankings were dramatically increasing because Google hadn't really figured it out yet. But now we've seen all of that traffic kind of claw back, or most of it.
Yep.
And so, there's still a quality to quantity, threshold that you need to find the sweet spot. There's definitely an expectation of producing more, and you want to be producing more, but it still has to be of that quality. The route we take is just using AI to produce a really, 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 really high quality brief, and then having a human spend, a tenth of the time writing it because all the information's laid out there. But it's still, you still get those irregularities, and you kind of break up a traditional pattern by having a human write it.
Yep. 100%.
And I think the challenging with all of this is there's like no right way. There are best practices, but it's not black and white, and there's ways to do it better. But it really comes down to focusing in on, what are those original inputs that you can provide. Awesome. Well, we're at time. Feel free to run your own audit, scan the QR code. If you guys have any questions about what to do with it next, let me know. Hopefully you guys can rank a little bit higher. And if you have any questions, hit Austin or myself up on LinkedIn, and we're always available.
Hopefully it was helpful, guys. Nice meeting you.
See you guys. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
See you guys.